The rain was heavy. It slammed against the roof like small rocks, and wind howled through the trees outside. Jake sat alone in his small cabin, deep in the forest, staring at the fire. He had no visitors, no family, and no friends. He liked it. That way, life was quiet. Until tonight. Knock. Not. Jake froze. No one ever came here. Not even delivery drones. He stood up slowly, his hand reaching for the small pulse pistol under the table. The knock came again, soft, weak, almost like a child. He walked to the door and opened it just a crack. And what he saw made his heart skip a beat. There stood a girl. She looked no older than 20. She was soaking wet, shaking, and wearing only a torn dress. Her skin was light blue, glowing faintly. Her eyes were large, violet, and full of fear. Her lips moved slowly. "I can cook. I can clean. I can be quiet," she whispered. Jake stared at her. An alien girl, in the middle of a storm, standing at his door like a broken doll. Before he could ask anything, she fell forward. Jake caught her in his arms just before she hit the ground. He laid her gently on the couch near the fireplace. Her body was cold, too cold. Her skin had strange bruises, and there were marks on her wrists like she had been tied up. Jake wrapped a blanket around her and placed a cup of warm tea nearby. She didn't open her eyes. He didn't know what to do. He had never seen an alien up close before, not like this. Sure, he'd seen them on screens, on space stations, or at big cities, but never out here, never like this. And especially not half unconscious at his front door. He watched her sleep. Her face looked peaceful now, but something about her felt broken, like she had run from something terrible. A few hours later she woke up. Her eyes opened slowly, and she looked around like a frightened animal. Jake sat nearby with his arms crossed. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. She looked at him and whispered, "Please, don't send me back." "Back where?" She didn't answer. "Who are you running from?" he asked again, her eyes filled with tears. She looked down and hugged her knees. "I can cook," she said again. "I can clean. I can be quiet." Jake frowned. She wasn't answering his questions. She was repeating the same words like they were programmed into her. "Did someone do this to you?" he asked softly. She nodded just once. Jake took a deep breath. He didn't like trouble. He didn't like people. But something about her made him pause. Something inside him whispered, "She needs help." He stood up and walked to the kitchen. "Are you hungry?" She nodded again. Jake gave her some hot soup and a towel to dry her hair. She ate slowly, carefully, as if she wasn't sure she was allowed to. After she finished, she looked around the cabin. "May I clean?" she asked quietly. Jake blinked. "You just woke up from almost dying. You don't need to clean." But she stood anyway, picked up the dirty plates, and started wiping the table. Jake sighed. What kind of life had she lived that this was the only thing she knew? That night, as the rain continued outside, Jake checked the door locks and looked at the forest from the window. There were no signs of ships or drones, but his instincts told him something wasn't right. Someone would come looking for her. He turned around. She was folding the blanket on the couch, making sure every corner was perfect. She looked at him and whispered again, "Thank you for not sending me back." Jake nodded slowly. "You can stay for now," he said. She smiled faintly. It was the first smile he had seen from her. He didn't know her name. He didn't know her story. But he felt something shift in the air that night. This wasn't just about helping a lost girl. This was the beginning of something much bigger. Something dangerous. Jake woke up before sunrise. The storm had passed, but the cabin felt different. Not cold, just quiet. Too quiet. He looked toward the small couch. She was gone. Jake grabbed his jacket, heart pounding, and rushed to the door. It was wide open. The forest outside was still dripping with rain, and a strange fog covered the trees. Then he saw her. She was standing barefoot in the wet grass, staring up at the sky. Her face bathed in the first light of morning. The stars were gone, but she looked like she missed them. Jake didn't say a word. He just walked over and stood beside her. The ground was cold under his boots. She was silent, her arms wrapped around herself. "You'll catch a cold," he finally said. She looked at him and whispered, "I was listening." "To what?" "The sky," she said softly. "But they've stopped calling me." Back inside, Jake made 2 cups of tea. She sat at the table, her eyes fixed on the steam rising from the cup. He wanted to ask 100 questions, but something about her made him pause. She looked like a fragile glass sculpture, beautiful, but one wrong question and she might break. "What's your name?" he asked gently. She stayed silent. "Where are you from?" No answer. "Why were you out there alone?" She looked up for a second. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Then she looked away again. Jake leaned back in his chair. "You don't have to tell me, but I need to know if I'm in danger for helping you." She finally spoke. They don't like it when someone escapes, especially me." "Who are they?" She shook her head slowly. "You wouldn't believe." "Muh." "Try me," Jake said. She looked him in the eyes, and for the first time, there was something fiery behind her silence. "They call themselves caretakers, but they are not. They raise girls like me in labs, not to live, but to serve." Jake's stomach tightened. The way she said it so calm, like it was normal. "How did you escape?" he asked. Her fingers tightened around the cup. "One of the scientists helped me. He died for it." The day passed slowly. She didn't rest. She cleaned everything, washed the dishes, folded the clothes, even oiled the old tools hanging by Jake's wall. She worked like someone trying to prove they had value. Jake watched her carefully. She never complained, never asked for help, never spoke unless spoken to. And she never stopped moving. At one point, Jake said, "You don't have to earn your place here." She smiled, just barely. "I do, I always do." Later that evening, Jake walked into his small workshop and checked his comm screen. There were 6 missed signals from the outer sensors, all coming from orbit. Quiet, encrypted, and aimed toward the planet. Not a single one had a source ID. That was not normal. He looked toward the window. She was sitting outside now, watching the sky again. "Are they looking for you?" he asked. From the doorway, she didn't turn around. "They never stop." Jake clenched his fists. He didn't want trouble. He just wanted peace. But now, trouble had entered his life and asked for shelter. And for some strange reason, he'd given it. That night, as the fire burned low, she sat near it with her knees tucked in. Jake stayed awake, sitting across from her. He asked softly, "Do you ever want to go home?" She looked at him, confused. "This is the first place I've felt safe. I don't want to go anywhere." "But you still won't tell me your name?" She thought for a long moment, then whispered, "Leora." Jake nodded. "It's a nice name." She gave him the smallest smile. Then she said something that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. "If they find me, they'll erase me." Jake didn't sleep that night. Jake had learned to live with silence. But ever since Leora arrived, the silence felt different. It wasn't empty anymore. It was tense. Like the quiet before something dangerous. She worked around the cabin like a shadow, silent, graceful, always moving. And Jake? He couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were watching them from above. 3 nights had passed since the storm. Leora no longer flinched when Jake entered the room. She even laughed once, softly, when the cabin's old cleaning bot sprayed soap across the floor. But even in those moments, her eyes never stopped scanning the sky. Jake noticed. That evening, he stepped outside to check the signal antenna. The air was cool, the stars above bright, but his sensor panel blinked red dot. An unidentified signal was passing overhead. Low, slow, watching. He checked the coordinates. Exactly above his cabin. He looked up. At first, he saw nothing. Then the shape appeared, a dark triangle, silent, moving like a shadow between the stars. Not a transport. Not a trader ship. A hunter. He rushed back inside. Liara stood at the window, already staring at the sky. You saw it? He asked. She nodded. That's not a ship, that's a scout. A scout for who? She turned, her voice low and flat. For the lab. They found me. Jake's blood went cold. What do they want with you? She didn't answer right away. She walked to the fire, staring into the flames that she could see her past inside them. Then she said it. They didn't just make me to serve. They made me to control others. Jake blinked. What do you mean? I can speak to machines, influence weak minds. They called it a gift. I call it a prison. Jake stepped back. Are you saying you're dangerous? No, she said. Quietly, I'm saying they are. The next morning, Jake found his cabin's drone camera melted into a twisted mess of metal and wires. He hadn't heard anything during the night. They had already come close, and now, the forest was no longer safe. Jake took Liara deep into the basement, a place he used for storage and backup gear. He set up his emergency monitor and checked the do. Scans. Multiple energy spikes. And a second signal, closer now. Grounded somewhere in the valley. Someone or something had landed nearby. We can't stay here. Jake said, loading his bag with supplies. He didn't argue. But as they moved toward the door, she stopped him. There's something you should know, she said. Jake looked at her. Waiting, she reached into the collar of her old torn dress and pulled out a tiny object, a silver crystal the size of a fingernail, glowing with blue light. I stole this, she whispered. This is why they won't stop. What is it? It's not just data. It's a voice, a consciousness, a message from one of their early test subjects, one who woke up and started remembering what they truly were. Jake took a step back. And you've been carrying this the whole time? Liara nodded. He said one day, a human would help me. One with a kind heart and a strong will. Jake stared at her. Why would he say that? She looked at him and smiled for real this time, because his message ended with your name. Suddenly, a red light flashed on the wall monitor. Motion detected outside. Jake grabbed his weapon and ran to the front door. Crouched low, heart racing, a figure stood. At the tree line, not a soldier. Not a bounty hunter. It was a man. Or at least it used to be. His skin was pale, wires crawled from his neck like vines. His eyes glowed yellow. And on his arm the same symbol Liara had described from the lab, a black triangle with a single white eye. The voice that came from the creature was mechanical, empty. Liara, you are property. Return, or the human will be harvested. Jake raised his weapon. Liara stepped forward. No, she said. This is my life now. And he is no longer alone. The machine man stepped back, for the first time. It hesitated. Then, without a word, it turned and disappeared into the trees. Jake stood frozen. They're testing us, Liara said. Me, you, our choices. Jake's voice was low. Then we don't wait, we fight back. And beside the fire that night, he looked at the small alien girl who had once whispered, I can be quiet. Now he saw someone much more, a survivor. A key, a weapon they should never have made. Jake had one rule, never go into town unless you had to. But rules break easily when you're hiding someone the galaxy wants back. Liara wore a large hoodie and kept her head low. Her glowing skin was hidden, but her eyes, they still held fear. Jake could feel it with every step she took beside him. The market wasn't like it used to be, once a quiet outpost where traders sold scrap and spice. It had now turned into a strange mix of silence and stares. Too many people looked too long. at strangers, and Jake was now walking with a secret worth more than a starship. They passed food stalls, broken machines, crates of black market tech. A vendor called out, "Fresh meat, straight from Sector 9. Another waved glowing beads, saying, "For calming pets or lovers." Jake ignored them all, but Leora paused. A small child sat beside one stall, dirty and alone, trying to sell one glowing stone. Leora knelt, placed a credit chip in the child's hand and whispered, "Hide this. Never sell it." Jake gently pulled her away. "You can't help everyone," he said softly. She looked back once and nodded. "But someone helped me." At the far end of the market, they reached old Orlo's salvage shop. Orlo was half blind, half drunk, and fully greedy. Jake handed him a damaged energy core. "Need credits, quick," Orlo snorted. "Still living like a ghost in the woods, eh?" "Fine, I'll give you 200. Jake didn't answer. He just waited. That's when Leora sneezed. Orlo looked up, squinted, and froze. "What's this?" he said slowly, sniffing the air like a beast. Jake stepped in front of her. "My cousin's daughter." Quiet type. But Orlo wasn't listening. He moved closer, staring at her face. No, I've seen her kind before." He reached under the counter and pulled out a device glowing red. Jake's hand went to his weapon. Orlo held up a hand. Relax, just scanning." The screen blinked, then flashed bright blue. Orlo's mouth fell open. "By the moons. You're hiding a live bred. A real one. She's worth." Jake slammed his hand on the counter. "She's not for sale." Orlo leaned in, his voice low and greedy. "Listen, friend. I can call the buyer now. You'll be rich. Live bred. Girls like her, they're lab-grown, enhanced, valuable. She could buy you a moon with her body." Leora took a step back, trembling. Jake looked at Orlo, his voice ice cold. "If you open your mouth again, I'll break every tooth in it." Orlo raised his hands. All right. But don't say I didn't offer." Jake grabbed the credits and pulled Leora out of the shop. As they walked through the crowd, Jake could feel it. Someone was following them. He glanced back. 2 figures, tall, armored, and wearing gray cloaks. Their movements were too smooth. 2 trained, not market thugs, trackers. He turned a corner fast and pulled Leora into a narrow alley between buildings. They stopped, breathing hard. Leora whispered, "They're here for me." Jake nodded. "We need to move, now." But before they could step out, a voice came from behind. "You shouldn't have brought her here, human." They turned. A third figure stood at the other end of the alley, his face hidden behind a metal mask, and on his shoulder the same symbol Leora feared, the black triangle with the white eye. Jake raised his pistol. The man chuckled. "What will you do? Shoot one. The other 2 will finish you before your finger twitches. Be smart. Hand her over. No pain. Quick payment." Leora stepped forward, voice shaking. "I am not property." The man's head tilted. "You were born in a glass tube. You belong to the people who paid for your body, your mind, your upgrades. You are ours." Jake stepped between them. "No, she's mine to protect now." The man's smile vanished. But before anything else happened, a loud blast shook. The alley. Smoke. Explosions in the market. People screamed. Someone had set off a decoy charge nearby. In the chaos, Jake grabbed Leora's hand and ran. They didn't stop until they reached the woods outside the town. Breathing hard, Jake looked back at her. "You okay?" She nodded. "You didn't have to fight for me." Jake looked away, voice quiet. "Maybe not, but I wanted to." She stared at him for a long moment. Then she whispered, "You're different from the others." Jake gave a tired smile. "I've been called worse." But deep down, even he didn't know why he cared so much. All he knew was, if they came again, he wouldn't run. He'd fight. Because some people are worth protecting, even if the world says they're not. The forest was silent, too silent. Jake had lived here for years. He knew its every sound: chirping insects, wind in the leaves, animal calls. But now, nothing. No birds, no wind, no life. It felt like the world was holding its breath. Liara walked beside him, holding the small crystal tight in her hand. They had just escaped the town, and Jake had hoped the forest would hide them. But as they reached the edge of the cabin clearing, Jake stopped. His cabin door was open, not cracked, wide open. Jake pulled out his weapon and motioned for Liara to stay behind a tree. He stepped carefully into the cabin. The inside was a mess. His furniture had been thrown aside, drawers pulled out, walls scanned and burned. His devices were gone. Even the fireplace had been torn apart. But worst of all, they had left a message. On the wall, burned into the wood with plasma, were 3 words: "Return the property." Jake clenched his jaw. This wasn't a warning. It was a promise. Liara stepped inside, her eyes scanning every detail. "They know where you live now," she said quietly. Jake nodded. "They won't stop," she added. "They don't need to. They're patient, cold, like machines." Jake turned to her. "Then we stop running." She looked at him with wide eyes. "What do you mean?" He opened a hidden floor panel and pulled out a metal case. Inside it, old military gear, a wrist, a stun net, and a compact energy bomb. "I've fought before," he said. "I swore I'd never kill again. But this is different." "You'd fight for me?" she asked, almost like she couldn't believe it. Jake looked at her. "I already am." That night, Jake set traps in the woods, silent ones, trip wires, motion mines, signal jammers. Liara helped. She moved with a quiet grace, her glowing fingers touching the tech like she understood its soul. Jake noticed. "You really were designed to control machines, weren't you?" She nodded. "Not just machines, systems, defense nets, drones, sometimes even thoughts." Jake raised an eyebrow. "You can control minds?" She looked down, only for seconds, and only weak ones. "Still," he said, loading a stun charge, "that could save us." Liara hesitated. "There's something else," she whispered. Jake turned to her. "I think they're not just coming for me." "What do you mean?" "They want the crystal inside me, but they also want to study you." Jake blinked. "Me? You protected me," she said. "You chose me. That makes you a problem and a test subject." Jake stared at her. So now he was part of the lab's experiment. Around midnight, the first sign came, a low whirring sound in the trees. Jake ran outside and activated the jammer. Air shimmered, and suddenly, a drone appeared, visible now under the static. Liara pointed. "There's more." 3 more drones uncloaked near the tree line. Jake aimed, fired. 2 dropped with clean blasts. The third sent out a pulse signal too late. A loud hum filled the air. Then, the trees moved. No, not the trees. Something among them, a tall figure, made of black armor and bone-like plates, stepped into the light. Red eyes glowed from its helmet. Jake recognized it instantly. A retriever, lab-made hunter, programmed to collect escape test subjects. Dead or alive. It spoke with a metallic voice. "Return subject L13, or your body will be disassembled for study." Jake raised his weapon. Liara stepped forward. "No," she said. "You're not taking anyone." The retriever didn't flinch. "Resistance detected. Lethal force authorized." Jake fired first. The shot hit its chest, but it didn't fall. It charged. Jake threw an energy bomb. The explosion rocked the clearing, but the retriever crawled out, smoking but alive. Before it could strike again, Liara stepped in front of Jake and screamed, not with sound, but with light. Her body glowed. Her eyes turned white-blue. The retriever froze. Shaking. Then it collapsed, sparks flying from its joints. Jake stared. "What did you just do?" Leora fell to her knees. That was all I had. I can't do it again. Not soon. Jake lifted her into his arms. You saved us. She looked up at him, tears forming in her glowing eyes. I was made to be a tool. But you treat me like a person. Jake looked at the wrecked cabin, the burnt walls, the fading lights in the sky. This place is no longer safe, he said. Where will we go? Jake held her close. Somewhere they won't expect. And this time, we take the fight. To them. Asterisk. The snow was falling softly now. Jake and Leora had traveled far from the ruined cabin, deeper into the cold mountains where few dared to go. The wind whispered through tall, frozen trees. It was quiet, but not peaceful. They were being followed. Not by hunters this time. Something else. Something. Watching. They stopped at an old, hidden station buried in the mountain rock, a forgotten outpost from a war no one remembered anymore. Jake entered a code only old soldiers would know. The door slid open. Inside, the lights flickered. Leora stepped in behind him, eyes wide. What is this place? She whispered. Jake didn't answer, because someone was already inside. A woman stood in the shadows, tall, sharp-eyed, wearing black armor marked with a silver star. Jake. Carter, she said. You finally came back. Jake lowered his weapon, slowly. Didn't think you'd still be alive, General Wraith. I didn't think you'd be dragging a lab maid with you, she replied coldly. Looking at Leora. She has a name. Jake. Sahad. Wraith raised an eyebrow. Fine. What does Leora have that's worth putting a target on your back? Jake didn't answer. Leora stepped forward. I have something your rebellion needs. And she opened her hand. The silver crystal glowed in her palm, pulsing like a heartbeat. Wraith's eyes narrowed. I've seen one like that before, buried inside a dying test subject. This one's awake, Leora said, and it carries the full message. Jake looked between them. What message? Wraith answered. Proof that the labs are more than cloning centers. They're building something bigger, a control signal. A way to enslave entire species. This crystal holds the original code. The voice of the first mind they tried to erase. Jake looked at Leora. You knew? She nodded. That's why they want me so badly. I'm the last piece. Wraith leaned back. We could use that code to destroy them, or control them. Jake frowned. You mean fight them? Wraiths. Eyes glinted. I mean win. She turned to Leora. You give us the crystal. You join our side, and in return we protect you. You'll never run again. Leora didn't speak. Jake could see it in her eyes, fear and doubt. He stepped between them. She's not a weapon. She's a person. Wraith looked at him. And people die in war. We can't save everyone. But with her help, we can save millions. Jake's fists clenched. There has to be another way, Wraith smirked. There never is. Later that night, Jake sat beside Leora in a dark corner of the outpost. She was quiet, her hands around a warm cup. They want to use me, she whispered. Jake nodded. They always will. But if I don't help, others might suffer. Jake sighed. Only you can decide. Just know this. I'm not here to use you. I'm here to stand with you. She looked at him with wide, glowing eyes. No one's ever said that to me before. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out the crystal again. I'll help them, she said. But on one condition. Jake raised a brow. What condition? I stay with you, always. Jake smiled gently. Deal. The next day, the plan was made. Wraith gathered her rebel fighters. A map was laid out on a table. Leora stood beside. Jake, no longer hiding, she was no longer quiet. No longer afraid, she pointed to a dark spot on the map. That's their main lab, underground, shielded, but I can get you in, Wraith nodded. Then let's prepare. As everyone moved out, Jake looked at Leora and said, You're not the same girl I found at my door. She smiled, glowing. Softly, because I'm not alone anymore. In the shadows of the outpost, far away from the lights, a small drone watched, recording everything. And high above, in orbit, a voice crackled through a dark command center. Target acquired. The human and the subject will not leave the next battle alive. The sky burned red. Fire rained from above as dropships slammed into the mountain, shaking the rebel outpost. Sirens screamed. Soldiers ran. Walls cracked. And in the center of it all, Jake and Liara stood side by side. This was not a dream. This was war. Move, Jake shouted as rubble fell behind them. He held Liara's arm, leading her through smoke and flame. The lab's army had found them. Faster than expected. Smarter, stronger. They didn't come to capture. They came to erase. Liara clutched the crystal close to her chest, her skin glowing brighter with every step. Jake looked at her. You ready? She nodded, her voice firm. I was born to be used, but now I choose to fight. They reached the control chamber deep inside the mountain. General Wraith was already there, bleeding from the arm, holding a power rifle. You brought the key? She asked. Lio stepped forward. Yes. She walked to the center panel, pressed the crystal into a core slot, and the whole mountain trembled. Screens lit up. Old systems came online. Buried memories, hidden in machines, began to speak. A voice echoed through the chamber. I am Subject Zero. I remember. I remember what they did to me. What they did to all of us. Jake's breath caught. Liara closed her eyes. It's working, she said. His story. It's spreading. All over the galaxy. Signals were being sent. Evidence. Names. Lab locations. Experiments. The truth could no longer be hidden. But they weren't safe yet. The doors exploded behind them. A massive retriever unit entered, larger than any before. Black armor, 3 times the size of a man. Eyes burning red. It locked onto Liara and raised its weapon. Jake fired first. His blast hit, but barely scratched it. Take her, Wraith shouted. Get her out of here. Jake turned, but Liara didn't move. No, she said softly. This ends now. She stepped forward, alone. Her body began to glow so bright it was painful to look at. Run, Jake, she whispered. Grabbed her hand. No, if you stay, I stay. You'll die. He smiled. I told you, I'm not here to use you. I'm here to stand with you. Liara's light grew until the walls shook. The retriever paused. Systems overloaded. Sparks burst from its armor. Liara screamed, not in fear but in freedom. The crystal in her chest exploded into pure energy. The retriever melted into dust. The chamber collapsed, and everything went white. Silence. Then breath. Jake opened his eyes. Dust fell around him. He coughed. Beside him, Liara lay still. Liara, he whispered, touching her cheek. Her eyes slowly opened. Faint, glowing blue. You stayed, she said weakly. Jake nodded, tears in his eyes. I told you I would. She reached up, touched his face and smiled. I chose you. And I don't regret it. Months later, across the galaxy, the labs were destroyed. The truth had spread. People rose up. Clones were freed. Liara now walked freely in the sunlight, no longer hiding. No longer quiet. No longer afraid. Jake walked beside her, not as her protector, but as her partner, because he opened his door to a stranger and gained someone who changed his world forever.